in the debt ceiling through a two-step process that allows Congress to disapprove the debt limit increases. Looks like the House is coming in. We'll take you there live.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. Motions to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1975, H.R. 1843 if ordered, and approval of the journal. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. The unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules and passing H.R. 1975. The clerk will report by title.
H.R. 1975, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 281 East Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, California, as the First Lieutenant Oliver Goodall Post Office Building.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many as are in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative. What purpose does the gentleman rise?
Mr. Speaker, request a recorded vote.
Does the gentleman ask for the yeas and nays?
Yes.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The U.S. House in on an unusual Saturday session. They'll start off here with three postponed votes on suspension bills that they debated earlier this week. But after that, they will move on to debate with another debt ceiling and debt reduction plan. This is basically Harry Reid's version of the legislation. This is a House version of Harry Reid's bill. Yesterday, of course, the House passed the Boehner plan by a vote of 218 to 210. Harry Reid's measure, or the House version of that measure, would allow for $2.2 trillion in deficit reduction over 10 years and a $2.4 trillion increase in the debt ceiling in a two-step process, allowing Congress to disapprove of the debt limit increases. Now, unlike the Boehner plan that passed yesterday in the House, the second increase in the debt ceiling under the Senate plan, or the House version of the Senate plan, would not be conditioned on enactment of additional deficit reduction legislation, and it would also not include the balanced budget amendment, that process that was included late yesterday and which revised the Boehner plan and got it through again on a vote of 218 to 210. So a 15-minute vote here. It'll be followed by two other votes and then on to debate to that other debt measure. On this morning's Washington Journal to lay out the weekend, we were joined by Congressional Quarterly correspondent Richard Cohen.
Senior congressional reporter Richard Cohen from Congressional Quarterly joins us to talk about the latest developments in the debt ceiling negotiations, where they've been, where they are, and where they're going. And we've sort of laid out three headlines that talk about that a little bit. In the Wall Street Journal on the front page, Boehner bill squeaks through. Shift to the right was needed for passage in the House. In the Washington Post, Senate headed for critical vote that could decide the deal. And then back to the Wall Street Journal, McConnell likely holds the key to the deal. Richard Cohen, take us through the past, present, and the future.
Well, good morning. The past has gone for maybe 6 months that Speaker Boehner, when he took office back in January, began to prepare Republicans for what he knew would be a very difficult vote to raise the federal debt ceiling, which is, we know from the Treasury Secretary, Timothy Geithner, that he says it will expire, that it will need to be raised by this Tuesday. So the 6 months of work by the House finally culminated in a vote Friday night, last evening, around 6 o'clock, in which the House narrowly with 218, 210 without a single Democratic vote, agreed to raise the debt ceiling, but with a condition of making some spending cuts. Now, of course, that bill needs to go to the Senate, which has really done nothing to this point on the debt ceiling, and has 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, maybe into Tuesday, to get it all done. And the pressure clearly is on, and we'll talk more about it. But to the extent that the bill is now in the Senate, under the Senate's always unusual procedures, they plan to have a key vote at 1 in the morning tomorrow, Sunday morning. That's when the Senate will do its business to to try to end the debate on what is now Senator Reid's proposal or some amended version of it. But under the Senate procedures, there's a need for 60 votes to end the debate. Since there's only 53 Democrats, including 2 of whom are independent, then there will clearly need to be at least 7 Republicans voting to end the debate. And if they don't end the debate at 1 o'clock Sunday morning, then we really have problems.
Who's driving the bus, so to speak, in the Senate at this point? Is it the majority leader, Mr. Reid, or is it the minority leader, Mr. McConnell?
Well, there's a little bit of each. Obviously, it's they both have an important role here. And Speaker Boehner, likewise, has an important role in the Senate because, at least in an indirect sense, I'll get back to Boehner in a minute, but in the Senate, Senator Reid last evening, Friday night, received the House-passed bill, and then the first thing he did was got the Senate on what essentially was a party line vote, got the Senate to say no to the House-passed bill, to the Boehner bill, and then Senator Reid, driving the process, laid down, offered his alternative. But in doing that, Senator Reid invited all senators, especially Republican leader McConnell, to join him, to offer, to reach out to him, to offer alternatives that would try to get to 60 votes. As I said, he needs Republicans, and for the logical way for this to proceed is for those Republicans to channel their views through Senator McConnell, the Republican of Kentucky, the Republican leader.
Now, Senator Reid, in offering his proposal, asked for a straight up or down vote, and Senator McConnell said, no, we want to go through the normal process where it takes the 60 votes to end the filibuster, correct?
Because if they only have a straight up or down vote, then Senator Reid can pass his alternative solely with Democratic votes. McConnell's effectiveness is through using the Senate cloture procedures, in which they can keep talking unless 60 votes would end the filibuster. So Senator McConnell, and this is no surprise, this is the way the Senate works. It takes 60 votes to do virtually anything in the Senate, and that's the case on this bill as well.
The President says that he endorses both the Reid and McConnell plans and says that they could be modified and ensure passage in both houses. This is what he had to say yesterday. We'll take a look, and then we'll get your response.
And there are multiple ways to resolve this problem. Senator Reid, a Democrat, has introduced a plan in the Senate that contains cuts agreed upon by both parties. Senator McConnell, a Republican, offered a solution that could get us through this. There are plenty of modifications we can make to either of these plans in order to get them passed through both the House and the Senate, and would allow me to sign them into law.
Richard Cohen, what is the likelihood that the Senate is going to work together the way the President is proposing and get this bill passed?
That is the $64,000 question. Let's put it this way. The leaders in Congress, in both parties, in both chambers, have said for weeks or even months that they will work together to assure that something is done and that they will avoid what's been called a default, which would mean that which would result if there is not an extension, an increase in the federal debt ceiling. So, on the one hand, they say they're going to cooperate, and we'll see that later on Sunday morning. And then, obviously, if the Senate makes changes, the House would have to approve the changes. They say they're going to cooperate, but all the talk remains very partisan, very divisive in both parties.
We're talking with Richard Cohen of Congressional Quarterly about the latest developments in the debt ceiling negotiations. We'd like for you to get involved in the conversation. The number is 202-624-1111 for Democrats, Republicans 202-624-1115, and Independents 202-624-0760. Give us a call or send us an email or tweet. Our first call comes from Delight, Arkansas. Joe, on our line for Democrats. You're on the Washington Journal.
Yeah, good morning.
Go ahead.
I wanted to have anyone ever explain exactly what's in those plans that you said the Republicans, keep hollering about the Republicans had passed the bill. Can they explain exactly who are they going to be cutting, what they're going to be capping?
You asked a very good question.
And on the back of who going to have to bear the brunt?
It's a very good question. And the fact is, you really, Joe and all the viewers out there, you really have not heard much about specifics, because all the proposals, three main proposals that Rob referred to, are similar in that they make the so-called spending cuts. They would result in some spending cuts, but they do it through a device called spending caps, which would reduce overall spending by what seem like large sums of money, hundreds of billions of dollars, even a couple $1 trillion over the next 10 years. But in response to Joe's question, which is an excellent question, the cuts are not specified. It's only a general cap that would reduce overall spending and then leave it to subsequent legislation in this Congress or subsequent Congresses to figure out where the specific cuts are to be made. So,
if it would move the process forward, why not make those cuts specific?
Because it's too hard to reach agreement when you have a Republican-controlled House and a Democratic-controlled Senate and a Democratic president. And let me make one other point. All three of these proposals work off of the concept of caps. And frankly, there's not, some of the numbers in the caps are fairly similar to each other. And there's, even with all the harsh partisan rhetoric from both sides, when you look at the specific proposals, they're not radically different.
Our next call for Richard Cohen comes from Tampa, Florida. Virginia, on our line for Republicans. Go ahead. Virginia?
Yes, hi. This is Virginia from Tampa, Florida.
Go ahead.
Yes, I have been in contact with my representatives, and also I have emailed and received multiple emails back from President Obama's office. I am a Republican, however, I am considering changing my party because I'm very disgusted with what the Republicans are trying to do. There does need to be compromise and bipartisan agreement. I read the bill that the House tried to pass. The only thing I agreed with it as far as the bill went was the closer look at those who get SSDI. As a veteran family, we need to protect the benefits of veterans, our elderly. So whomever is going to support protecting Medicare and Social Security and veterans benefits, that is who I'm going to vote for.
Do you see a lot or hear a lot of people out in America talking about crossing party lines because of the disaffection that they feel for their representatives here in Washington?
There's some of that, but I guess I would state it a little bit differently. Public opinion now is very negative on both parties. It's less a case of voters switching from one party to the other, and more a case of voters saying a pox on both your houses. Can I take play off just briefly off the comment from the caller from Tampa? She's talking correctly about the partisanship, and I'll give you briefly examples of how this partisanship has played out. Last evening, Friday night, as we said, the House passed the bill and went to the Senate. the first thing the Senate did in receiving the House bill was to have essentially a party line vote in the Senate saying no to Speaker Boehner's bill. That happened last night. What's the House going to do today? They're going to have a vote on the proposal that's the initial proposal that Senator Reid said laid out, in which the Republican-controlled House will say no to Senator Reid's alternative. So you have kind of this instinct, this reflex motion in both parties to say no to the other party, and at a time when there's a need, obviously if there's going to be a deal, they eventually are going to have to say yes to each other, but we're not there yet.
Next up, Leawood, Kansas, on our line for Independence. Go ahead.
Yes, the one thing that I have not heard any discussion on whatsoever was the argument that was used last fall by these same Tea Partiers saying that we can't raise taxes on the wealthiest of Americans because that would deprive them from reinvesting that money back into the economy for small business and entrepreneurship, and that has not happened. So yet they're still using the same argument today that we can't raise the taxes because it would impair the investment. Well, these people are they're giving themselves bonuses. They're investing the monies overseas. They're pocketing the funds, or whatever they're doing with it is not going back into where it was stated. The purpose for being of not raising the taxes to begin with. And I have not heard any conversation from anyone on any network or newspaper or anything else addressing this comment and this argument for not raising the taxes on the wealthiest. And I thank you.
Good point. And the reality is, and this gets back to the point I made a moment ago, all three of the proposals include no additional revenues, no tax increase, no elimination, no elimination of tax breaks. That's the assumption in each of the three proposals. There has been some earlier. There was some discussion of increased revenues. We don't want to say tax increases, but increased revenues were discussed fairly intensively and with detail during the negotiations between President Obama and House Speaker Boehner. They reached a tentative agreement in their discussions, which ultimately fell apart, but in their discussions, they did agree to a number, I think $800 billion of increased revenues over 10 years, but they didn't get very specific, again, as to how it would be achieved. But those negotiations collapsed, and that was pretty much the end of discussions of increased revenues.
In Marblehead, Massachusetts, Ed, you're on the Washington Journal.
Yes, good morning, C-SPAN. It's very unfortunate that this very politically divisive debate is hung up over the debt ceiling because it's really very much of an illusion. Texas Congressman Ron Paul, who's running for president, has pointed out that the Federal Reserve holds $1.6 trillion of Treasury debt, which holdings from its quantitative easing purchases. And since the Fed is a quasi-branch of the government, this debt is really money that the government owes to itself. This could be canceled. If this $1.6 trillion of debt were canceled, it would reduce the outstanding debt by a corresponding amount to a level well below the debt ceiling. And as a result, it would buy a lot of time for both political parties to pull back from the brink and have a careful debate to consider how the best solutions for the debt and the deficit going forward.
Well, there's obviously the issue of not only the amount of debt that the nation has, but how much credit is still available is something that's pretty technical, and I guess where the politicians, the members, the leaders, and members of Congress, they pretty much have decided they're going to go with Treasury Secretary Geithner, and Geithner said that the credit runs out. There's no more available next Tuesday. The caller's correct. There are others who have a different view of it, but that view pretty much has been cast aside because it's really, even those who say there's additional money available, they agree it's not. It's a matter of days, maybe a few weeks, so that what's happened essentially is that the Treasury Department's deadline has become an action-forcing mechanism, and we see that not much happens in Washington without a deadline.
In the New York the New York Post this morning, they talked about Treasury sweats D-Day forces officials to map out an action plan, and they show Secretary Geithner dressed up as a football coach, and under Geithner's game plan, they've got prepare banks for all-out blitzes from Treasury sales, substitute Treasury auctions with special Uncle Sam IOUs, and set up a defense to avoid a Lehman-like money market meltdown. Does it sound like maybe the administration has decided that Congress is not going to come to some sort of an agreement by August 2nd, and it's time to lay out a plan B to get past that date?
Well, they have to be prepared at the Treasury Department and throughout government for all options, but they've tried to do it, as I understand it, very quietly, very cautiously. They have not gone public in describing their options, in part because they don't want to alarm people about what might be the consequences, and they want to create the impression, to leave the impression that this option B of what happens if Congress doesn't act, they want to leave the impression that this is, we don't need to worry about option B, that Congress will raise the debt ceiling as the leaders of Congress have said, and obviously we're going to see whether option A works.
And while we're on the subject very briefly about this option B, have you heard of any discussions going on between Secretary Geithner or the people in the Treasury and their international counterparts to keep the international markets steady as the Congress and the President continue to work through this?
We can be certain that those discussions have taken place, and we can be certain that the U.S. officials have tried to reassure leaders around the country, both public officials as well as private sector, bankers and financiers. The Treasury Department has tried to assure everyone that everything's going to be fine, but well, it's up to Congress to make sure that, and that's what this weekend is about, whether there's going to be progress to make sure that everything will be fine. If there's not action by Monday morning, there will be reason, I want to be careful how I put it, there won't be much time left to make sure if by come Monday morning, if Congress hasn't, if the Senate hasn't moved this along, there will be cause for concern come Monday morning.
Richard Cohen is our guest for about the next 22 minutes. He's a senior congressional reporter with Congressional Quarterly. And our next call comes from Unionville Center, Ohio. Wanda, on our line for Democrats. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, C-SPAN. It's nice speaking with you. I'm an elderly lady that's a widow, but I worked for 35 years and longer, paid my taxes, and now I am very low income. I do not get any assistance, but I am worried about my money. But I really don't quite understand all these things. It seems like they're all above my head. But there was a young senator that was on C-SPAN about 3 nights ago, but I didn't get his name. He was a Democrat from Virginia. And his statement was, first of all, we are Americans. We are not Republicans or Democrats. And if we do not do our jobs, we should be fired. And you know something? I agree with that.
Well, that gets to my point, a couple of points that I've made, interesting comments from the caller. One, the public, including the lady from Wanda, I think from Ohio, is an example of how the public is getting pretty disenchanted with what's going on in Congress, with the lack of action. And number two, she's talking to the extent that the caller, Wanda, cited a member of Congress, a Democratic senator from Virginia, maybe that was Mark Warner, who talked about the need for bipartisanship. Yes, quite a few members of Congress talk about the need for bipartisanship, and there even have been, including in the Senate, including Senator Warner from Virginia, some bipartisan discussions, but we really have not seen the results of that, the bipartisan proposals. There's no real serious bipartisan proposals that have come to either the Senate or House floor during this entire discussion.
Both the Senate and the House will be back in action later on today. The Senate gavels in at, the House rather, gavels in at noon. You'll be able to watch their proceedings live on C-SPAN, and the Senate is in at 1 in the afternoon. You'll be able to watch them live on C-SPAN 2. Cadillac, Michigan. Ryan on our line for Independence. You're on the Washington Journal with Richard Cohen.
Hi, I'd just like to make a quick comment.
16, the nays are 0. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules and passing H.R. 1843, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 1843, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 489 Army Drive in Barrigada, Guam, as the John Pangilinan Gerber Post Office Building.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many as are in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative. What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
On that, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote on the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. 5-minute vote.
Facing a Tuesday debt ceiling deadline, the House is in again today on Saturday. A couple of votes here, one more after this, and then they will take up Senator Harry Reid's Budget Control Act. That's actually how it's listed, the H.R. 2693. Of course, yesterday, the House passed Speaker Boehner's plan for the debt ceiling, the deficit reduction plan, by a vote of 218 to 210. That bill was blocked in the Senate when it went over there shortly after passage in the House. The vote in the Senate was 59 to 41. So the House is going to take up the Harry Reid proposal under suspension of the rules, which means it'll get 40 minutes of debate. It'll need 2/3 of those present and voting to pass. Harry Reid's proposal provides for $2.2 trillion in deficit reduction over 10 years and allows for the debt ceiling to increase to $2.4 trillion. One of the big differences between the two is that the Reid plan would not call for the adoption of a balanced budget amendment, as did the Boehner plan. So one more vote after this, and then back to debate on the debt ceiling. The Senate is in today as well. In fact, the leaders are on the floor now speaking, and you can follow that on C-SPAN 2. And we will be here with the House throughout the afternoon. As long as the House is in, it will be live here on C-SPAN.
On this vote, the yeas are 414, the nays are 3, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And it'll be the last vote in this series, and then they will move on to debate another debt reduction plan. This is Senator Reid's plan, which would cut the deficit by $2.4 trillion over 10 years between 2012 and 2021, and it would allow the debt ceiling to raise to $2.4 trillion. And it would also call for a congressional committee to recommend more cuts. It raises the debt ceiling in 3 stages up to $2.4 trillion. Again, Tuesday is the deadline by which the U.S. reaches the limit of the what's called the statutory debt limit of $14.3 trillion. The House is in today and will be through debate and final vote on this, at least. The Senate is in also in a special weekend session. They also are working on Harry Reid's proposal. And just a short while ago, the leaders of the Senate, Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid, spoke back and forth on the floor. And in that conversation, Mitch McConnell revealed that 43 senators have signed a letter opposing Harry Reid's bill. And what that means is that Harry Reid needs 60 votes to move forward with his legislation. So Senator McConnell saying so far 43 Republicans opposing the Harry Reid bill. You can follow the Senate debate, by the way, on C-SPAN 2. And for those of you looking for Book TV this weekend, well, it is continuing. You can follow that online at booktv.org. When the Senate is out, we'll obviously bring you Book TV coverage, but you can keep track of Book TV at booktv.org.
Yeas are...
Mr. Mack. Mr. Mack votes aye. Mr. Hall of Texas. Mr. Hall of Texas votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 298, the nays are 113, with 2 answering present. The journal stands approved. What purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
To ask the House be in order, Mr. Speaker.
House will be in order. The House will be in order. Members, take your conversations off the floor.
Hey.
Members will take their conversations off the floor.
What's that?
No, I don't mean to say that. I've heard this before.
Say what? Oh. You don't mean to say what?
Will be in order.
Hey, how you doing, Tommy? So did he do it on the Senate floor? Yeah.
House will be in order. Members take their conversations off the floor. Members will take their conversations off the floor. Members on the side of the majority will take their conversations off the floor. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 2693 to cut spending, maintain existing commitments, and for other purposes as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2693, a bill to cut spending, maintain existing commitments, and for other purposes.
What purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Will suspend. The gentleman will suspend. House will be in order. The House will be in order. The gentleman has the right to be heard. The gentleman from Massachusetts will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it true that a bill considered under suspension of the rules denies the minority party the right to offer any amendments or even a motion to recommit?
A motion to suspend is not liable to amendment from the floor.
Further parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will state his parliamentary inquiry.
Is it true that a bill considered under suspension of the rules requires a two-thirds supermajority vote in order for a bill to pass?
Under Rule 15, a motion to suspend may be adopted by two-thirds of the members voting, a quorum being present.
Further parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Is it also true that a bill...
The gentleman will state his inquiry. House will be in order. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Is it also true, Mr. Speaker, that a bill considered under suspension of the rules does not pass if it receives a simple majority of vote, but not two-thirds of the vote?
The gentleman is correct.
And further parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Does this mean that Speaker Boehner's bill to raise the debt limit and destroy Medicare would have failed if it were considered under suspension of the rules yesterday?
The gentleman has not stated a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. Dreyer, and the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Govern, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks on this measure, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr.
Gentleman
Speaker,
from California.
I think this is the first time that I've offered a Reid proposal in the House of Representatives. And one might ask why it is that we are here doing this. And it's very apparent to me why it is that we're here doing this. And that is, we want to ensure that next Tuesday we see an increase in the debt ceiling so that Social Security checks go out, we bring about spending reductions, and we maintain the credit rating of the United States of America and do all the other things that I believe both Democrats and Republicans alike want to have take place. As you know, Mr. Speaker, we have passed from this House 2 measures within the last 2 weeks, the cut, cap, and balance measure, and just last night, the Boehner proposal, which, as we all know, stemmed from a bipartisan meeting that he had exactly 1 week ago this afternoon in his meeting with Senator Reid right down the hall. And unfortunately, Mr. Reid no longer supports the proposal that we passed last night, and Senator Reid has said on several occasions that his plan is the only plan that can pass both houses of Congress. Now, 5 minutes ago, Senator McConnell once again asked Senator Reid to bring up this plan that Senator Reid said was the only one that could pass both houses of Congress, and Senator Reid said no. Thursday night, I introduced this measure of Senator Reid's and was asked in the Rules Committee yesterday by Mr. McGovern whether or not we would bring it up, and I said we didn't plan to. But the fact is, Senator McConnell, having made the request now at least twice in the other body to have it brought up, asked us to raise this measure here, and that's exactly what we are doing. Now, if we look at where it is that we're headed, we all want to have a bipartisan compromise that will ensure that on Tuesday we see that increase in the debt ceiling take place and do these other things. That's what the Speaker of the House and the Democratic leader of the United States Senate, along with Leader McConnell and Leader Pelosi, discussed a week ago today. And as Speaker Boehner said from the well last night, this was an agreement which was supported by Senator Reid. But things have changed. Things have changed. We know that. But there is one thing that has not changed, and that is we have to act as quickly as possible. We need to come up with a compromise. And you know what? Since Senator Reid happens to believe that his measure is the only one that can pass both houses of Congress, we are going to let him know when we defeat it here in the House of Representatives that it is not the plan that can gain broad support in the House and the Senate. And so for that reason, Mr. Speaker, we are bringing this up. We, I believe, should have an opportunity for every member of this House to go on record on this issue, and I'm going to urge my colleagues to vote no on this proposal so that we can come together with an important bipartisan compromise to achieve the goal that we all say that we share. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 3 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this process has become a joke. It is a disgrace. It's an insult to the American people. I would say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, now is the time to act like grown-ups. This is the time to put our country before your political party. This is the time to put our country before the Tea Party. This is the time to do what's right. Today you are bringing up the latest version of the Reid plan. under not only a closed rule, but under the most restrictive process we have in the House, usually reserved for non-controversial bills. This is a $2.5 trillion bill being brought up under the same process that you bring up bills naming post offices. 20 minutes of debate. No amendments allowed. We're not even allowed to offer a motion to recommit. To win, you need a two-thirds supermajority. Under this process, your own bill would have failed. That's right. If your bill were brought up under this procedure, your bill would have lost last night. Mr. Speaker, the only bill we should consider on the House floor is one that has been agreed to by the House and Senate leaders and the President of the United States. So why are we doing this today? Let's be honest, you're doing it to score some cheap political points. I would like to remind the Speaker of the House that he's the Speaker of not just the Republican Party, but that he's the Speaker of the whole House. Now is the time to bring us together, not tear us apart. Maybe the Reid bill is the one that can unite us because it achieves tremendous savings without decimating Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. But, Mr. Speaker, to bring it up under this process is cynical and it demeans the House of Representatives. I would say to the Republican leadership, enough political stunts. Our country is facing a terrible economic crisis, a crisis that you created and one that you can avoid. But we've run out of time. Now is the time for leadership, not bad political theater. Now is the time to behave like legislators. Please rise to the occasion. The Reid bill is not the bill I would have written. It's not the truly balanced approach that I would have hoped for. There are no revenues in this bill. But I think it's the best approach that is on the table right now. And I'm willing to compromise. So I will vote yes on this bill. I'm willing to put my country first. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves.
Let's give Jerry Lewis a round of applause.
Members are advised to address their comments to the chair, not to other members. Gentleman from California, Mr. Dreyer.
Mr. Speaker, this time I'm happy to yield such time as he may consume to the distinguished former chairman of the Committee on Appropriations, my friend from Redlands, California, Mr. Lewis.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Lewis, is recognized for as much time as he wishes to consume.
Mr. Speaker, if it were not for the remarks of my colleague from California as well as his colleague from the Rules Committee, I wouldn't be making these remarks. I'll begin with a quote. The fact that we are here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. Increasing America's debt weakens us domestically and internationally. Leadership means that the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better, unquote. Senator Barack H. Obama, March of 2006. By 2009, Senator Obama had become President Obama. In the 2 years since he became president, federal spending has increased by over $500 billion a year. In the past 2 years, he has added nearly $4 trillion to our national debt. Now President Obama is in favor of increasing the national debt limit. When, oh when, will the real Barack Obama stand up? I yield back.
The gentleman from California yields back his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, the Democratic whip, Mr. Hoyer.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 3 minutes. Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, our neighbors, our friends sent us here to be responsible and to come to the aid of our country at a time of crisis. Our country is at such a time now. Our people confront uncertainty and fear, and they're looking to us for the courage to compromise and act to prevent default and to prevent gridlock and irresponsibility. Yesterday, we learned that investors in American stocks lost more than $400 billion when just a few days ago, Speaker Boehner said he could not compromise with President Obama. Notwithstanding the remarks of my friend from California, the chairman of the Rules Committee, who talks about a bipartisan compromise, I tell my friend, you have not moved a single centimeter towards compromise with our side of the aisle. Not a single centimeter. And what do we see in the United States Senate, my friends? We see a majority leader of the United States Senate who has a president with him. So yes, you control 1/3. And you control over 40%, so you can stop things from happening in the Senate. But the people aren't looking to us for what we can stop. They're looking to us for what we can do, for what we can do to make our country healed at this point in time. So what has Senator Reid done with this bill that you introduced, guaranteed to fail? This is the second time you've put a bill on the floor to extend the debt limit, guaranteed to fail. It is a pattern, frankly, I say to you, my friends, and it's a pattern that the American public ought not to countenance. What Senator Reid has done is he's taken the view of Speaker Boehner and Leader Cantor and said we need a long-term solution. And then he has compromised, notwithstanding the fact that all of us on this side believe that the wealthiest among us should help take us out of this crisis and not rely on the most vulnerable among us. And so there is no revenue in Senator Reid's bill, notwithstanding the overwhelming numbers of us on this side of the aisle believe that's good policy. And I know that some of you on your side of the aisle believe that as well. Senator Reid has set up a process so that we can continue to look at what we know we need to look at, bringing our deficit and debt down, for which we are all responsible, my friends. I thank the gentleman for a minute. And so we confront this moment of responsibility. I believe my side of the aisle will overwhelmingly say yes, not because they like this bill, but because they believe it is a compromise that can work. Because it takes so much of the demands that you have made on your side of the aisle. But if you came to Congress expecting perfection, if you came to Congress expecting only that you do it your way and no other way, you will be disappointed, as all of us are disappointed, because it cannot happen that way. Our founding fathers brought us from many places with many perspectives to try to heal our country and provide for the general welfare. Let us avoid default. Let us set ourselves on a path of compromise. My friends on the Republican side of the aisle, we're going to vote, for the most part, for this bill. We do not believe it's perfect, but we believe it's possible. America expects us to do that. The summer soldiers and the sunshine patriots will retreat at this time of crisis. Do not do that. I yield back the balance of my time.
Yield my friend an additional 15 seconds. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves, and the gentleman from California is recognized. Well, Mr. Speaker, I will say that I was prepared to engage in a colloquy with my good friend from Maryland and explain to him that if Senator Reid believes that this is a great compromise, why will he not respond to Senator McConnell's repeated requests to bring it up in the United States Senate? And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to our presidential candidate, our good friend from Stillwater, Minnesota, Ms. Bachmann. Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized. The House will be in order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Throughout this debate over guaranteeing insane, never-before-seen in the history of this country levels of spending, President Obama has coolly stood on the sidelines, his arms crossed, very simply castigating Republicans for not giving him a $2.4 trillion blank check. Meanwhile, the only plan that the President has put forward is his February budget, which in itself contained yet one more $1.5 trillion deficit. The President has no plan. Only the Republicans have offered plans. Now is the time for the President to show leadership, and the only leadership that he's showing is one that's saying tisk, 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 trying to bring us to the brink, when in fact we're trying to be responsible and bring this to a successful conclusion. We call on the President of the United States to finally engage in the process, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman from Minnesota, Ms. Bachmann yields back. The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, let me just remind the gentlelady that no one on the Democratic side ever walked out of a meeting. At this point, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Michigan, the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Levin.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
To revise and extend.
Without objection, so ordered.
I've been here almost 29 years. This is a disgraceful moment. This country wants compromise. What you're doing with this bill is to undermine the chances of compromise. You're trying to throw a monkey wrench in the Reid bill before it can even leave the station. That's what you're doing. You're trying to make sure that the Senate cannot work its will. Why isn't this bill being brought up? Because Senator Reid wants to sit down with Senate Republicans and work out a compromise, and you're bringing up this bill to make sure that this will never happen. This is a disgraceful moment, Mr. Dreyer. It is a disgraceful moment.
Yield? Will the gentleman yield?
No.
I will say to my friend...
No.
Well, I'll yield,
Mr.
Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Dreyer.
Madam Speaker, may I yield time to my friend? Madam Speaker, may I yield time to my friend from Michigan? Am I allowed to yield time to my friend from Michigan?
Mr. Dreyer, you have already spoken.